Okay, so I just got a message in my folder about, I don't even want to say it out loud, horseshoeing the upper denture. It's just like the forbidden thing for me to even talk about because I hate it so much. But let's talk about it. Okay, so patients want to horseshoe the upper denture, which means to cut out the palate entirely because the palate is annoying. It covers the roof of your mouth, and in a lot of patients, it makes them gag. But let's get into this. So, most of the time, when a patient is gagging from a denture, it's due to three things. The denture is either too long on the palate, or too thick on the palate, or too loose on the palate. And yeah, I'm a know it all, but yeah, I do know it all. I've been doing this for a long time. So, if the denture has progressively caused you to gag and it didn't before, it's likely because the denture's too big and you need a reline, or it's time for new dentures. If you just got your first denture and it's making you gag, probably too long on the palate, and possibly too thick. Even if just the back edge of that palate is too abrupt, it goes back and then there's an abrupt edge on it, your tongue is going to hang up on that edge and it's going to cause you to gag. So I want to tell you, a lot of patients come to my office and it's one of the first things that they want to talk to me about, and it's on my questionnaire. Have you had extreme gagging with prior dental work, dentures? It's something I want to draw out of them and talk about right away, and sometimes they just bring it up to me. So I have a lot of patients who say, I'm just going to tell you right up front, I gag really bad when I've had my impression taken. I've tried to wear a retainer, or I've tried to wear something in the past that's really gagged me. And I'm telling you, 90% of the time when patients tell me this, maybe even more, I'm saying like 98, 99% of the time, when they tell me this, it's really not their truth. Usually, when a provider takes your impression and they gag you, it's because they're laying you down in the chair and putting a whole bunch of material in your mouth, and it's running down the back of your throat and taking impressions of your tonsils. Okay? That's usually why an impression gags you, first of all. When I take impressions of patients, I have them sit up. I put my hand on the back of their head, and I tell them before I do this, and I tilt them forward, their chin down, and I have them breathe through their nose. And if it would make them even more comfortable, I'll have them stand up. Stand up and walk around the room with the impression in their mouth. And usually that combats gagging. But let's talk about the actual denture. Okay, so most every single time, and I'm saying I've been doing this in my own practice. I'm going into my 13th year. Prior to that, I worked at my parents' practice since I was a kid. And real, true patients who needed their denture actually horseshoed and the entire palate taken out was, I'm talking a fraction, okay? When a patient tells me this up front, like, I'm going to have that horseshoed, I can't stand it, I cannot have the palate, I'll say, okay, I hear you, and you're the consumer, and I'm going to do what you ask me to do. However, please do it my way first, because I think that I can fabricate this denture and adjust it in a way that it's not going to gag you. And if that doesn't work, then yes, I'll horseshoe it. But, I'm going to document it in the chart, and I'm going to inform the patient, and they're going to have to document and sign, say, hey, I understand that having a horseshoe denture, I'm never going to have suction. I'm going to have to wear adhesive or glue in my mouth to keep that denture in, because there will be no suction. If the palate is not covered, there will be no suction. But I make the denture and I make the palate very, very, very thin. And this acrylic is very strong. As long as it's a well-fitting denture, it's not going to crack in half. Dentures crack because they're too loose. Okay. Anyways, I make the denture, I make the palate very, very, very thin, and I adjust a little bit at a time, a millimeter or two at a time on that back edge of the palate. and see how the patient tolerates it, then adjust some more, see how the patient tolerates it, do it some more. And one of the most important things is not to have an abrupt edge on the back end of that palate. If that palate is thin and the back edge bevels up and just kind of disappears into the back palate, the patient can't feel that sensation. Their tongue is not going to hang up on that abrupt edge of the denture. So, this is my message. Instead of just going in and saying, hey, I want this denture horseshoed, I'm gagging, take a more conservative approach. Have them thin that palate way out, have them shorten it up a little bit to your toleration, and make sure that that back edge is beveled, okay? Try that, because it really is like a forbidden thing in a denture maker's world like myself, is to remove that palate, because that denture does not want to stay up at all. You'll always have to wear adhesive. You get zero suction when you remove the palate. I hope this information helps, and it's not going to be a popular opinion, but I'm not here to blow smoke. All right, guys, have a great day. Bye bye.